Hey, everybody.
How are we?
Good. Yourself?
Yeah, not bad.
That's
Tail end
good.
of the cold, but we're getting there.
Yeah. Today, while I was at work, I had YouTube going in my ears, so I wasn't watching it. I was just listening to it, and I was listening to the full interviews, all to do with with Congress and the UFO disclosure
Yes.
stuff, and listening to the full interview opposed to just listening to the bits that you hear on the news is quite interesting. So there's some pretty decent stuff in there. So I don't know
Yeah, so
how much you've heard of it.
I've heard bits and pieces. I haven't had a chance to full look into it completely myself, like you have with the time you've had. But even from the snippets that the news give you to what has been said in other pieces that I've seen, there's just so much stuff that seems to be let out, and they know that there's more stuff there that they're not disclosing.
Yeah. One of the things they were talking about today is one of the they've been talking about. It's actually been through Congress a couple of times over the last couple of weeks. So it's a topic that's going to keep coming up, and I think there's a concerted effort from both parties to try and get some kind of clarity on what's actually going on, because it's now becoming something that the people really want to hear. So Congress have to actually start stepping up and pushing it to them, but the military are the ones that are still holding it all up.
Yeah, like some of the naval officers, not officers, but there's some of the people that work for the Navy and with the Air Force with the Navy have come out and said, we've seen these things. But it's just getting the higher ups, I suppose, to sign off on it.
Yeah, it's not only that though. One of the guys that was being interviewed, he's military. I don't think he's the one from the Tic Tac incident, but he was there. But one of the other guys, he was actually saying that while anything that makes it through the media, they actually look at it as if it's just a rare event. But apparently, it's that common now that they're not surprised when they see these things. It could, and sometimes it's almost a daily occurrence, but it's just all hush-hushed up, Even that Tic Tac footage that you've seen, it's not all of it. And apparently, just one of the comments that was brought up was they can shoot a video of night flares and all the anti-aircraft bombardments and all this footage from miles away, these drone strikes and things with such clarity. Why can't they get the UFO with the same clarity? Now, what we've been told is the actual military on things of certain importance actually reduce the resolution, so it becomes more blurred and you can't actually see what's going on. So it makes you wonder what else is actually part of that footage, because that's only, I think that all up there's about 2 or 3 minutes all up, but the engagement lasted a lot longer than that.
Yeah. I'm reading it at the same time, to do with the last week's Senate's, not last week's, maybe a couple of weeks ago now, where they're talking about proposed legislation that would declassify many more records that the Pentagon's experienced with unidentified foreign objects.
Yeah. No, well, oh God. I think I listened to them about 3 times today, because I can't, when I'm working, I obviously can't get to my phone. So sometimes it will play the same thing again from a different YouTube site and things like that. And some of the subject matter, it's very interesting. Even going as far as they talk about one of the gentlemen specifically who they asked him, do you feel threatened, or have you been threatened in military terms, and he said, without mixing words, he said, yeah, he fears his life is in danger, his family, their life is in danger, and there have been verbal threats, there have been like media type threats and all that sort of stuff, but there've been physical threats as well, and it sort of ties into the sort of Men in Black, I guess, because they've actually got it recorded. Now, a lot of the stuff that happened in this meeting, even though it's still sort of heavily redacted and things like that, it's to get it all on public record. And they actually have documents, because he actually went to his superiors, who's one of these gentlemen is pretty high up, a general or something like that, and sent him a reply to this email saying, yes, you do need to be careful, because there have been viable threats. So he knows that something's going on, and it's coming through military type sources, which means somebody's pulling the trigger and saying, "Do it."
Yeah. Like, there's so much that you could want to go into, and so much I don't want to release all at once because it keeps people hanging on the edge of their seat, and the secrets of power.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I was gonna say. We did a video. Well, I did an interview with Stephen Bassett 10, 12 years ago, something like that, which we've already replayed on a previous episode. And one of the things that was mentioned when we talked about that was what disclosure would actually look like, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's happening because
100%.
while they're not giving out all the details, what they should be doing, more and more is coming out, and I think more and more people now they've been desensitized to it to the point where it's not going to be a shock to the system when it happens.
But how long has Hollywood been desensitizing people to stuff like that?
A long time, a very long time. You know.
Well, you got all the movies, it's TV shows, movies,
Yeah.
book series, it's everything.
And
people become comfortable with it.
well, I mean, you know my history. You know, I had an encounter when I was 7 years old, so it's never been a question for me at all. It's more been about actually getting governments to come forward and learn more about what it all is, you know. And part of what they were talking about with this Tic Tac footage, they said with the old systems and everything, they didn't see diddly squat when they were out there flying, you know. But what happened was they upgraded all their radar systems on the FA-18s and stuff like that, and all the planes that had the enhanced radar were picking up these objects. And they said it even picked them up as high as 80,000 feet, which is space, you know, in space, and then dropping down to 10, 20,000 feet in more or less an instant, in less than a minute, dropping that far and then hanging around for a while, and then just vertically climbing straight back up to 80,000 feet again in under a minute, which
Just something we can't do.
Which is something that we can't do, yeah. And one of the other incidents that they talked about was they were up there and they've got those monitoring planes that fly into a hurricane and things like that to get all the wind data and stuff like that. There was one of them that was out doing stuff, and it was a Category 4 storm, and they actually picked this object up and they've got it tracked on radar. Well, I wouldn't say tracked on radar because this thing was stationary at a quite a good height, and they said it was absolutely dead still in relation to the ground below, or it was actually over the ocean, but it was dead still. It wasn't moving on their system anyway. It wasn't moving more than a meter or two in a Category 4 storm, and they said it doesn't matter what you've got up here, a Category 4 storm is going to buffet and blow, and you're going to get moved. But this thing was just stationary, which means, you know, what sort of systems do they have in place to, one, not rise and fall, you know, gravitational wise, you know, so it's obviously anti-gravity, so they've obviously got something set up as well for inertia and stuff, because the wind and everything, it's going to, well, on anything that we've got, it's going to affect it.
You'd have turbulence.
Yeah.
So, looking into this whole disclosure, so the bill that they're actually having come through at the moment is modelled after the John F. Kennedy assassination record collections.
Yeah.
So it's based on that act. And looking into this, Hill turned around and said that Schumer's serious about getting UFO info out there. With the, say if someone finds a UFO or there's biological evidence of non-human intelligence that may be controlled by a private person or entities, must be handed over to the Senate-appointed review board.
Yeah, but apparently the Senate doesn't have that kind of power.
No, they don't, but they're handing out this information like it's, hey, we've got approval to do this.
Well, it's funny you talk about the JFK and assassination. Well, not the assassination, but you're talking about John F. Kennedy and stuff like that.
Yeah, the act.
Yeah. What one of the things, and I'm going to delve into a TV show which came out in the 90s, which it was a really good show in its time. I mean, it got a little bit silly towards the end of it, but it's based around this guy that he comes into Washington, and he's young, idealistic, and he's got his wife there and everything, and they stumble across basically an alien conspiracy that aliens are on Earth, but they're a bit like the body snatchers, I guess. They've taken over humans and things.
Yep.
And they actually reckon that a lot of the stuff to do with the Kennedys, and it goes into the whole Cuban Missile Crisis and stuff like that, but they reckon he was assassinated more because he was actually going to, and this is a conspiracy theory, so Carl would like this. He was assassinated because he was going to come clean to the public. So that's why they reckon he was taken out. And this show does go into that, and it's really good. But what brought me on to shows was listening to some of the details on the on the interviews in Congress that were talking about stuff that we haven't heard of yet. Like these fighter pilots, in one instance, they were flying. You know, always fly with the wingman off to the side and stuff like that. They reckon one of these alien things actually split between the two of them. It belted through and then hoiked the brakes on, and it was within meters of the plane. So they got a good look at it. And how they described it was a charcoal grey cube within a clear sphere. And they reckon, you know, each of the corners of the cube were touching the edge of the sphere. And automatically, me being a Trekkie and everything, I went straight to the Borg have arrived, you know. And again, that goes back to my question about how much information is leaked to TV studios and film studios so that they can include certain parts of fact. I'm not saying this is the case in this instance, but to include in their films so that if the day ever does come when they turn up in the skies above, it's not as big a shock. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And
slow desensitization.
Yeah. And, you know, yeah, it blew me away, some of the stuff they were talking about. You know, they have a full thing in place for capturing, or not capturing, but when something goes down, they get it and take it and then reverse engineer it. But apparently they have fully intact. This is what they were saying. They have fully intact, as well as a few crashed craft, and they have. Now this is where he couldn't go into it. Is they do have bodies which are not of human.
And
human
very,
origin.
very vague about that as well.
Well, and this is the thing, right? This is the thing for me. They turn around and they said it's a national security issue. But what this guy was saying is, what is the national security issue in relation to aliens? What it is they're saying they don't want to release their technology, the technology that the US currently have, so that other people can work on it. So, well, you know, you can still release the stuff on the aliens without going into your tech, or, you know, at least sort of redact the parts about your tech. It's not your tech we're interested in. I mean, I suppose foreign powers maybe, but
extraterrestrial.
Yeah, it's them, and they try putting it off as a national security issue, you know. But also, what they went into is there were so many commercial pilots and passenger jet pilots that have had issues as well, that it's not just a national security issue, it's an issue globally.
Yeah.
Because, as they said, for an object which is the size, they reckon it was the size, well, talking about the Tic Tac anyway, they reckon it's the size of a reasonable sort of passenger jet, not a big jumbo, but a passenger jet, they said. And this thing has no flight surfaces, no means of any visible control surfaces, any of that sort of stuff, yet it can accelerate from a standing start to Mach 1.2 in less than 10 seconds It can go vertically from a standstill up from 20,000 feet up to 80,000 feet in under a minute. And, that's going up into space. And this is where the issue arises is if they've got technology to just fall out of the sky, hover around, have a look, and then take back up before we've even got jets on site, what chance do you have of actually fighting something like that?
Yeah, you wouldn't, but I don't think they're here to fight anything. It would be going to toast if they wanted to.
Now, this is what I want to get into, what we were talking about earlier, just before we started the show, is part of what they were talking about, if you go through the full interviews, is they talk about the Russians. Now, here, they were saying when they've engaged, when they engaged the UFOs, the Americans, they didn't actually fire on them, they didn't arm their weapons or anything like that, but they were playing with them, basically getting super close and trying to get a good look at what's going on. Apparently, all of their tech would start to go silly, as in they would lose the radar and stuff like that. They didn't lose engines or any of that sort of stuff, so they could still fly. But all their sort of monitoring and tracking stuff went haywire. Even some of their newer tech, some of their new tech stuff. But talking about the Russians, they've started talking about releasing some of their files. They have had just as many cases over their airspace as what the Americans are having, and it's way more than what the public know. But apparently the Russians have actually engaged and they've started firing at these alien craft. And apparently every fighter that has engaged, every Russian fighter that has engaged the UFOs has gone down without the UFO firing a shot. They just do something and the plane just loses total power and it just falls out of the sky. So they have a standing.
Don't shoot at things in the sky.
Well, that's it. They have a standing order now. If they encounter a UFO, they're not allowed to engage with it.
But back to what you were saying with them having bodies of non-humans. Now, it was only in December 2022 where the Pentagon turned around and said, "No, we've got no alien life at all.
Yeah,
we'll keep looking, but we've got none." Fast forward 6 to 8 months.
It's look, I think the powers that be, well, the military, the Pentagon, they're getting too big for their own boots because, everybody knows that the president knows next to nothing. I mean, I would like to think that he did know something, but basically what they say is the office of the president is a limited time job. Once you've done your second term, if you get to your second term, sorry, I'm not going to jump into that one, but some people don't get there. At the end of your second term, you're out. So they don't want to keep bringing different people through this revolving door job. I know it sounds silly saying it like that because 8 years is a good stint in any job, but then there's a new person in, then you got more people running around with these secrets, so they don't tell them. But
you can. Why can't you?
Who makes these decisions? When everybody, and at the end of the day, and this is what Congress, I know, but this is what Congress is saying is, we work for the people. The U.S. military serve the greater American community. Who gives them the right to withhold evidence that could potentially affect every man, woman, and child, and other various bits and pieces that are around these days?
That's where the Central Intelligence comes in.
Yep, but we all have a right to know.
100%.
You know what I mean? Because we are not... we're all of this planet. It's not... This isn't to do with national borders and bits of land between water on this planet. This is a planetary issue because these things are coming from outside of our planet. So every person has a vested interest in knowing what's going on and taking it from there.
Well, what's the bet that they go to release more evidence and there's another fire with all their documents and we've lost it all?
Well, this is the thing. When I was going back and I was telling you at the start of the show that they only have about 3 minutes of this video, there's a lot more files there. Now, what they said was the initial incident was with a different team. There was two other planes up there at the time who first encountered this, but they were already coming close to the end of the... They actually did some maneuvering and stuff with them as well. But what happened was they were running towards the end of their shift, sortie, whatever they call it, and they were, getting low on fuel, so they had to come back in. So they had a second team ready to go. So those planes were out before these other ones came into land. And it's the second group that actually got the footage from the gimbal footage and the Tic Tac and stuff like that. And what he was saying is the speeds that this thing was going at, he said, and it was doing all this weird maneuvering, but it was flying over the water. And they said it didn't actually go into the water, but they said there was something underneath it, under the water, that was keeping up with it, almost like they were flying in unison together. And you could see the wash from whatever it was under the water. It wasn't breaking the waves, but when you watch those like submarines, or you watch if you got one of those personal, underwater, I don't know what you call them, pull you along jetpacks, I suppose. You see the disturbance in the water behind you, the bubbles, whatever you want to call it. This was exactly the same, but they looked away for a second, and when they looked back, it was gone. So that brings into question as well, because we haven't even literally scratched the surface with what's under the water on our planet. I wonder if they've got a base somewhere down that deep that we can't get down there.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. It's there's so much that they're not saying.
Yeah, and
you just don't know, and then you start saying things. People just say, "Oh, you're a lunatic. You're crazy."
Yeah, but I think those days are slowly starting to disappear now, because these things are being talked about in Congress, and it adds a little bit of validity to what's going on. You've got to think to yourself, one day it's going to come out, and then all these people are going to be vindicated that have been ridiculed for so long.
Yeah, there's not much we can do except for sit back, cross our fingers, and hope for the best.
I would like to see it happen in my lifetime. I don't know if it will, but it's God. How long's it been going on for? Again, we've done shows on it.
Hiding things from the public, or
no, I'm talking the UFO thing. I mean, even Chris Columbus.
The UFO thing's been going back since Roswell.
Oh no, it's been going back way longer than that. Even Christopher Columbus, in his actual log, talked about lights in the sky and lights under the water, and this was back in 1492. Yeah. The Wright brothers were long way in the future for them at that point. So obviously we couldn't fly, so who was flying in the sky? And then who was going underwater? Because I think it wasn't until about the 1800s when Nemo started, 1900s, where the Captain Nemo stories and the idea of submarines started to come into being. You know what I mean? So again, 1492. This was long before any of that. So something was definitely around. And back then, there was none of this faking stuff like you see in this day and age, because they didn't have the internet to to do it back then.
No.
These are actual recordings in a log. Now, what reason would a very famous captain have for putting something like that in his log if he didn't see it?
Yeah.
So they've been around, they've been watching us for a long time. What the outcome of it is, I don't know, but
well, to be honest, I don't think they'll stop here for too long. They've obviously realised that we're that dumb here. They're like, no point worrying about that place.
But this is the problem, right? They are worried about us because they're watching us. We're still very warlike. We can't even keep peace on our own rock.
Mm-hmm.
But our technology is getting to the point now where we're starting to reach out again into space. We did it in the 60s. I don't know if we got as far as the moon. That's another conspiracy theory show that we can go into, but
that could be next.
Well, again, there's so many things to do with that. Which again, talk about aliens, but it's like it's like that. Yeah. They're watching us because if we now get out to the stars and we have the same mentality that we have now. We're going to be taking war out there, and we are nowhere near technologically sound to take war to other civilizations that could obliterate us in a single thought. You know what I mean? They actually reckon that a lot of these, well, I don't know about a lot of them, but some of the stuff that I've heard is that the Roswell craft specifically, there's not that many control surfaces inside. They reckon it's some sort of a, like a hive. I think there's 3 or 4 seats centrally located above this, or below this gravity generator or whatever you want to call it, their power source. And they reckon it's all almost telepathic. And we aren't at that level yet.
No, but there's lots of things that we can do that we don't know that we can do as well yet.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that we aren't psychologically or physically capable of these things. We just don't have the not even technologically. I'm losing.
We're not open-minded enough to use 110% of our brain.
Well, you can't. You can only use 100% of your brain.
And you know what I mean.
the other 90%.
They do studies on athletes and everything else, and they say they're only using 80% of their capacity when they think they're at full capacity.
Yeah, but that's well, with my martial arts, they tried proving that point to me once or twice before, because with me being asthmatic and everything, when you're fighting non-stop for nearly an hour and you're just about out of breath, but you've got a sensei that's smashing you and pushing you around, go, come on, you can do more, then suddenly you're not going to get the better of me. You go into it and you start, like I had this guy pinned up against the wall ultimately after several bouts of full-on fighting and stuff. And while I had him pinned against the wall, he just looked at me and goes, see, you had got more.
Yeah, it's the fight or flight comes in, adrenaline comes rushes through your body, and it's like, bam.
Bastard. That's what I thought. He was right. You know, I hate it, but it's true. And we just don't have the intellectual capacity to reach into it. I mean, psychics and things like that, I reckon they've got to in tune with a bit more, but it wouldn't be much. You know, 1%. I mean, you got to remember, right? We're only using 10% of our brain. That 10% of our brain encompasses everything we've ever been taught, everything we've ever seen, all of our memories, all of our skill sets comes from that 10%. So can you imagine if somebody was using 80%, 90% of what we're capable of? You're talking about ESP, you're talking about telekinesis or psychokinesis as they call it now, all sorts of possibilities, and definitely the ability to interact with people and technology in a telepathic way.
Look, I've seen the Fantastic Four. I know it's possible.
Yeah. But no, it was just interesting watching the show. Well, not watching, but listening to the shows today, because, again, there were so many other things that I was going to go into, but like with all of our shows, we go off on a tangent with things.
Well, we haven't been too bad this one.
No, we haven't, but it's like what you said only a few minutes ago. Everything is connected. And you can delve from one thing to another thing, but you're still in the same topic group, you know?
Yeah. There is so many tangents you can take off opening one door into this area.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, I think we're out of time, so we're going to have to love yous and leave yous with that one.
Not a problem. You guys have a great evening.
Yeah, and keep it spooky. See, I'm taking your thing because you don't say it anymore.
That's fine.
See you later, guys.